Oh boy, I got a fun one for you today. This is going to be great. It's something you're not expecting. I don't even know what's going to happen. I'm here with my friend Bill. He was going to start telling me the stories. I said, don't. I don't want to hear anything. I want to hear it for the first time with all of you. So, what do you think it would be like to have Zig Ziglar as your Sunday school teacher? What do you think that would be like? I can't even imagine. I think it'd be kind of cool. Well, guess what? My guest, Bill Hedrick, Zig Ziglar was his Sunday school teacher. So thanks for joining us here in the Mortgage Loan Officer Podcast. We're brought to you by the Mortgage Marketing Animals. I'm here with my friend, Bill Hedrick. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it's a good pleasure. It's cool because I get to see you pretty much every day on Loan Officer Breakfast Club. And now here we are because you brought this up on Breakfast Club. And I don't know why or how the conversation went that way. I can't remember. Breakfast Club goes a million different ways every day. But you mentioned, you said, Zig Ziglar was my Sunday school teacher. And there was a couple of us that went, what? Really? And just for the sake of the audience listening, because I don't know the age demographic of everybody listening, but for the younger LOs, they might not even know who Zig is, Bill. You know what I mean? But for us, the guys that have been around a while, I'm in my 60s. You look like you're at least in your 40s, Bill.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. How old are you?
67.
Okay.
So,
but yeah, for us guys,
the best is yet to come, though.
That's right, baby. That's right. But for us guys, I mean, Zig Ziglar is a staple to us as far as sales training and sales books and all that. I've read a couple of his books, and they're just great. And you could tell that Zig Ziglar was just a good, decent guy, and he was your Sunday school teacher. Just indulge us. Just tell us about it. Tell us maybe a couple of stories that you might have, or what it was like to have Zig, and
It was an absolute
realm.
blast. I'll tell you, I moved to Dallas in 1979. I was transferred here by Salmons Cable TV. I was the Northeast Regional Marketing Director for Salmons, doing door-to-door sales in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. And they said, if you'll stay for the winter, we'll let you go anywhere you want come summertime. And their headquarters was in Dallas. So I said, okay, I'll stick around for the winter. They sent me to Dallas, and it was tough going, man. Nobody down here had cable TV. There was like very limited places we could go. And my wife saw a little flyer about see Zig Ziglar at 9 o'clock on Sunday. And so it was Friday night. And so I was like, hey, we'll go do that Sunday night. So we drove over to the First Baptist Church downtown here Sunday night, and come to find out it was really Sunday morning. So we missed it. And I thought, well, that's really a bummer. We missed the thing I wanted to do. It would be very helpful. And the next Sunday, we found out it was a Sunday school class. So I was like, well, we'll go try it out. This guy was a ball of fire, man. He used to sell pots and pans door to door. So the comment I made on the Breakfast Club the other day, somebody had complained about making a sales pitch, and I said, well, when Zig Ziglar was up in front of the class, he said one time, he had someone that told him, said, oh man, I don't like to tell people what I do. I'm a sales guy and I don't want them to know. And he said, well, what are you going to do? You're a professional talker. You're just going to keep talking and talking and talking. You're never going to close on this thing. And I said, no. So he was fantastic. I had tapes that I carried in his car that I virtually memorized. And he saved me. I created a sales team here in Dallas that at one point we had 150 door-to-door salesmen. I had 15 trucks installing cable TV. And it was a downer all day, every day, with all the complaints, guys falling through the ceilings when they were putting cable TV in and all that kind of stuff. And but having Zig behind the scenes helping me with my thought process literally changed my life. It just literally changed my life. It gave me, I never got through college, so I didn't have college education. And I leaned on his training to get me through everything. And the cable TV company basically didn't get the Dallas franchise. They wanted me to move to Burbank. And by that time I'd met my wife. I wasn't, really wanting to move. So I went to work for Golden West Entertainment, Gene Autry's company. And that was View Subscription TV. And they were running ads on television and spending 30 grand a month on ads on television. And they were bringing in about 150 to 200 sales a month. And I went to him and said, look, I got these salespeople that I've hired here, and now we don't have anything to sell because, Salmons didn't get the franchise here in Dallas. I'd like to sell View TV door to door. And they said, you can't do it. That's not how it works. And I said, well, I can show you how it works. I said, just give me a special. It was $49.95, 99 to have it installed. And I said, just give me a special. It's $29.99 to have it installed, and I'll go out and sell it for you. And so the first night I went out with, I finally convinced them to let me do it. It took me 3 weeks. The first night I went out, um, I went down one street and I sold 14 orders.
Wow.
And I went in to the office the next day and I said, look, put me in the truck, in the installation truck with your guys, because you couldn't get paid till they got installed. And I said, put me in the truck with your guys and I will take them down the street and we'll meet these same people. I'll get them all installed. And we installed 14 out of 14. Everybody was right on the same street. Well, they had 18 installers at the time running all over the metroplex, and they had about a 45% installation ratio, and I had 100%. And they were like, well, that's pretty interesting. So that's where I ended up with all these salespeople. And I got my guys to listen to these tapes in their trucks. And I said, just, you got to stay motivated. You got to make something out of yourself.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic for about a year and a half. And then the Gene Autry sold the whole thing to another group here, a bunch of attorneys that bought the TV station. And the first thing they did was fire me. And they put an ad in the paper and said, we're going to hire all your door-to-door salespeople and all your installers.
Wow.
And and it was taking a month to pay us. So I was handling payroll and wasn't getting paid, it was out of my pocket. And all of a sudden the money stopped coming in. And I had to hire an attorney to sue him. And we never did really sue him. He sent him a letter and said, hey, this is going to be, they're going to pay you and I get 30%. And so we got our check, made a bunch of money. I was 24 at the time. And I was looking for a job and I saw an ad in the paper that said, learn the real estate business from the inside out. Call Mr. H. And
Mr.
so I
H.
called Mr. H, little bitty ad in the paper. And I called him and I said, hey, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm in the mortgage business. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And I told him, what I'd been doing.
What year
And
is
he said,
this?
well, this was 1983.
Okay.
And he said, well, you're hired. Come on down.
That was hard.
I walked in and he said, I said, how do we do this? And he goes, and at the time I was talking to Zig and the people behind the scenes, because I'd also been doing photographic business cards, and Zig was wanting to hire me, but I just didn't want to do the traveling. He had to travel a lot.
Yeah.
Zig Ziglar, he was a traveling sales guy. And I don't know if you remember the story, but he used to take a pump with him. He had a pump that was like the old pump, like you pumped up and down to get water.
Yeah.
And it was a real metal pump that he carried around with him to his seminars.
As
and
a
he
prop.
would pump as a prop. And he would tell you, he'd say, look, what you got to do is when you're making sales, you have to keep after it. You have to keep after it. You have to keep after it. And then you have to prime the pump sometimes by spending some money on it. And you got to keep pumping and keep pumping and keep pumping. And then when the water's, sometimes you'll think there's no water coming out and you'll stop. And that's what what salespeople do, right? We get going on it, just like with all the stuff we're doing right now. We're trying to get some traction. We're trying to get some traction. You're pumping and pumping. And he said, if you stop, then the water goes back down the pipe.
You got to do it all over again.
It doesn't get the leather in the pump to where it swells up, and you got nice, smooth pumps with water coming out.
Yeah.
And so I've got a picture somewhere with him and that pump, man. And that's always stuck in the back of my mind as one of the best stories, is him telling you that you can't stop pumping on that thing.
I love it.
Yeah. The other one he told, though, you want to hear more stories? The other really good story that he told was one where he had a guy call him and say, hey, we're going to take you fishing next week. Right. And he said he woke up and the wind's, it's cold. He's up in the Northeast. It's freezing cold outside. His wife had opened the window a little bit. And the wind was blowing in, and he got up and shut the window down, answered the phone. And this guy says, we're going to Mexico next week. We're going to a millionaire's villa, and we're going to go catch the big ones. We're going to get out there with all the other people and do the fishing that we need to do. And we're going to get some fish. And, he got off the phone and his wife goes, who was that? He goes, well, I got to believe this guy, that one of the people that I work with. And he told her what she said. And he goes, well, but I can't do that. I've got this to do and that to do and this to do and that to do this. I got all the stuff I can do. And she goes, wait a minute, partner. She says, you mean we're not going to go to Mexico for a week because you got stuff to do? She says, sit down with me and let's make a list. And so he and his wife sat down and they made a list. And she goes, okay, you've got a guy at work that can handle this one. Somebody else can handle this one. You can get that done in about 15 minutes. You don't have to worry about that. And this one over here, well, I know I can help you with that. We'll get this done, but we're going to Mexico. And then he stopped and he said, I got everything done that I thought was going to take me a week in 2 days. And he said, let me ask you folks, you're salespeople, why don't you go to Mexico every day for the rest of your life? And you're sitting there listening to this guy and you're like, that is crazy.
Makes so much sense. Yeah.
That is. And I'll tell you something else. He was the
Mm.
very first person to come up with social canceling. Okay. You know how right now they're saying if you say something bad, you can be canceled. If you're not
Right.
saying what people want, you can be canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And Zig Ziglar is the very first one I ever heard bring that concept up. And here's what he said. He said, folks, and he said, before I tell you this, folks, let me stop for a minute. And he pulled out a pitcher of water and he put some water in a glass. And he sat there and took this drink of water and swashed the water around his mouth and everything. And he set the glass down and he looked at the audience and he goes, how many of you people were thinking about a glass of water before I poured that glass of water? He said, probably not too many. He said, how many of you now would like to have a drink of my glass of water? And everybody raised their hand. And there was 200 people in the class. Everybody's like, well, we all want a glass of water. And he said, folks, that's how advertising works. He said, in our world today, you've got these advertisers, and he had a couple of stories about trash coming out of your television and landing in your living room.
Mm.
And he said, these advertisers can get you to buy all kinds of stuff, sweetened coffee or sweetened Coca-Colas and all the stuff that goes with it. And he said, you're bound to this. And he said, some of the stuff that they're advertising now, I know that you're thinking, this isn't good for me. This isn't good for my kids. And he says, if you want to change what's on your television, what you need to do is you need to contact the advertisers and simply telling them, we're not going to buy your product if you advertise for these people anymore. And so we got together in that class and we actually sat down and wrote letters to different, well, it was a couple of stores at the time that had some, I call it suspect advertising
Mm-hmm.
that we weren't real happy about. And he said each letter that they get probably represents 1,000 people because they're thinking they got this. One person sat down to write this letter. About 1,000 people probably are thinking the
it.
same thing.
Yeah.
So we started writing letters to a couple of different stores here in Dallas, and they actually changed their policies.
Hmm.
I mean, it was pretty astonishing. He's the first person that I ever heard talk about cancel culture.
Culture canceling.
Yeah, whatever it is. And there's a lot of people now that have done that, but it's the other way around. It's the people that are trying to promote healthy stuff that are getting canceled out sometimes. So it's a two-way street. Nobody ever thought about that. So anyway,
interesting stuff.
Yeah, he was downtown at First Baptist for about 10 years, and then he moved to another church north. And I ended up I had kids at the time, so I couldn't switch churches. I just stayed right there at that point.
How neat though. How neat to, make a move and then realize, oh, Zig's talking down here, and then being able to go and hear him directly on a consistent basis, and then even get to know him. I mean, like he was like, want you to carry his water pump around for him, huh? I mean,
yeah, and I've still got a coffee cup that says "See you" at the top that he gave me over at his office one day.
Yeah,
it's in my office. I've got it's sitting there by one of his books with his statements. But I've read all his books, and I had my kids listening to his tapes for a while. They sort of got tired of it, but they're grown now, so they still remember that though back in the day.
So what's cool about this is that is Zig's the kind of guy where I liken him to like a Dale Carnegie almost, where they instill values in you. It's of course we need activities. We need to know what we do. We need nuts and bolts, but a lot of his sales coaching and training is instilling certain values in you as well. Do you feel like that was the case with him, that like he was transformative in your person?
He saved me, man.
He saved you.
Yeah. Well, him and my wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had sort of a wild childhood,
Yeah.
and I went to college and loved college. Did pretty well, just ran out of money,
Yeah.
and so I had to go out and get a job.
Mm.
And I got that job selling cable TV out of Knoxville,
Yeah.
and then moved to New Jersey.
Mm.
Was up there for a year and a half, and it was because
When you say he
it's
saved you, do you mean like
yeah,
spiritually he saved you? Is that what you
he
mean,
did.
or do you mean other in
Both
other?
mentally, spiritually, physically. He said people are mental, physical, and spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been pretty healthy, but mentally, I had different ideas about stuff than I do now by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a different approach to how to handle that stuff. And I sort of took over his approach to thought process.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then spiritually, for sure, he was a very, very, very heavy Christian.
Of
And
course. Yeah.
you
Do,
know,
why do you think he was able to get through to you? What do you think? What was it about him that made you, that allowed him to get in? You know.
it was personal.
Mm.
He had gone through a lot of the same stuff. He'd never had a college education. He had to go out and make a living for his family. He was talking about a couple of times in his little classes. He talked about how he had to go hide his car around the corner from his house because it was going to get repoed.
Mm.
And fortunately for me, I never got into a position like that. But he went through a lot of very hard times,
Mm.
and then he found Christ and became he talked about pouring all the alcohol in his house down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said something happened after that because his prayers were answered.
Mm.
And the redhead was his wife. He always talked about the redhead. And he said that she saved him too. And my wife has held my hand through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you meet his wife?
One time, but I didn't know her. I was more or less acquainted, just,
Mm.
but she didn't come to the office and stuff like
Yeah.
he did.
Okay.
And I was
Mm.
only in his office 4 or 5 times.
Mm.
He invited me in for some, he called them prayer sessions. They were really office meetings,
Mm-hmm.
but he did them as a prayer session when he
Mm-hmm.
was in there.
Mm.
So it was, he really did. Um, but one of his things was maintain your education,
Mm.
pick up a book, read these books, you know. And so I'm a, you know, school of hard knocks. You never graduate. And that's
Mm-hmm.
me. I
Mm-hmm.
keep reading books, and if I find something I'm interested in, I go figure out how to do it. So I love the modern technology you've got now. I wish I was a lot younger, because this stuff, especially the AI stuff that you guys are putting together, man, this stuff is
Mm.
mind-blowingly
Crazy,
wonderful
huh?
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah.
Very great stuff.
Give me, if you can. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and if you can't think of something, it's all good. Everything you shared so far has just been great. And um, but is there one thing that you tell the listeners? Is there one thing you tell them maybe that you picked up from Zig that you think this is the one thing I'd like to leave you with? That I picked up from Zig. Is there anything you think of? And if not, I get it. So, when I get put on the spot like this, I draw blanks. So
It's
if you do, it's all good.
the one big statement he said over and over again. You can get anything in this life you want if you help enough other people get what they want.
Love it.
And so that's the whole idea, is to ask people what they want. And that's why I've loved the mortgage business, because you can sit down and go, okay, what is it we're doing to help you today? And if you can actually learn how to give them what they want, and you do that enough, you'll get what you want. And that's the one thing I would definitely leave you with.
Awesome. Bill Hedrick, everybody. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for sharing with us, man. When you
For
said it
letting
on
me.
Breakfast Club, I was like, I gotta hear the story,
Yeah.
Because you know why? Because I'm a fan. I'm a Zig fan. Zig to me is this mystical guy that, I would never meet, of course not now, but like he's this mystical, magical guy and you were like hanging out with him, so
And when you hung out with him, he lived. He wasn't just talking the talk; he was walking the walk.
walking the walk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
he made deep impressions on you that changed your life, that saved you. And
Yeah,
so very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that stuff with us today. I
you're very
appreciate you,
welcome.
man. All
Thank you
right
for
on.
having me, Frank. I appreciate it.
It's my good pleasure. All right. Well, for all of you listening, man, I hope that was enjoyable. It was for me. And I hope that was enjoyable. Be sure to join us again here at the Mortgage Loan Officer Podcast, brought to you by the Mortgage Marketing Animals. And join us on Breakfast Club. If you're not on Breakfast Club with us, you got to hang out. It's loanofficerbreakfastclub.com. It's free for anybody in the mortgage business. 30 minutes of free coaching every single day, Monday through Friday. You like it, right, Bill? It's a good place.
Hey, it's you guys have saved me after the pandemic. Zig was long gone, and when
Mm.
I first started on the Breakfast Club, there was only 12 people on there.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how I found it, you know, but I've been coming back every day. It's the reason I get up in the morning, dude. Thank you for
Wow.
being there.
Well, thank you for those kind words. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you there. So good stuff. All right. Again, guys, join us, loanofficerbreakfastclub.com, and we'll catch up with you here the next time on the Mortgage Loan Officer Podcast. We'll see you. Bye bye.